The cartel's maritime convoy has just suffered its greatest loss, watching a massive drug shipment vanish under U.S. firepower. With crackdowns intensifying, cartel leaders took their boldest gamble yet, deploying narco-subs, go-fasts, and armed boats to shield their cargo. But when the fleet crossed paths with a controversial U.S. Navy task force, the outcome was swift and devastating. How did the Navy dismantle the convoy? How severe was the blow to cartel operations? Join us as we reveal the full story behind the strike that crushed the cartel at sea. In what U.S. officials are calling the largest narcotics offload in Coast Guard history, crews in Florida on Saturday unloaded 76,140 pounds of cocaine and marijuana seized during coordinated operations across the Eastern Pacific and Caribbean. Valued at an estimated $473 million, the record-breaking haul underscores the Trump administration's escalating counter-narcotics campaign under its new initiative, Operation Pacific Viper. The massive seizure consisted of 61,740 pounds of cocaine and 14,400 pounds of marijuana intercepted during 19 separate smuggling operations. Authorities detained 34 cartel members and confirmed the removal of what they estimate as 23 million lethal doses of cocaine, an amount that could, in theory, fatally overdose the entire population of Florida. The interruptions were far from routine. Coast Guard cutters, tactical boarding teams, a helicopter squadron, and even the Navy's USS Cole joined in sweeping maritime operations involving a Royal Netherlands Navy vessel. 11 high-speed, go-fast boats were intercepted, many after grueling multi-day pursuits in open waters. Among the largest seizures were 8,800 pounds of cocaine near the Galapagos Islands in June, and 9,160 pounds near Socorro Island, Mexico, in July. Officials celebrated the bust as a milestone in President Trump's wider effort to stem narcotics inflows into the United States. Homeland Security described the mission as a historic partnership, leveraging overwhelming naval and Coast Guard power in international waters, where roughly 80% of successful interdictions occur. By pushing enforcement farther offshore, the administration seeks to dismantle supply routes before they can ever reach American ports. What makes Operation Viper stand out even more is the presence of USS Cole. This Arleigh Burke-class Flight 1 Aegis-guided missile destroyer was home-ported at Naval Station Norfolk in Virginia. The ship was named in honor of Marine Sergeant Darrell S. Cole, a machine gunner taken out in action on Iwo Jima in February 1945 during World War II. Built by Ingalls Shipbuilding and delivered to the Navy on the 11th of March, 1996, it remains one of 62 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers and one of 21 Flight 1-class ships that carried the original 5-inch 54 caliber gun mounts. After years of continuous service, the destroyer became the center of international attention on the 12th of October 2000, when it was attacked by al-Qaeda terrorists in the Yemeni port of Aden. A small fiberglass boat packed with more than 1,000 pounds of explosives detonated against the ship's port side while it was refueling, tearing a 40 by 60 foot hole into the hull. 17 sailors lost their lives, 39 were wounded, and the blast caused extensive structural damage. The attack was the deadliest strike against a U.S. Navy vessel since the Iraqi missile assault on USS Stark in 1987. It revealed the lethal effectiveness of asymmetric warfare tactics and demonstrated how vulnerable even advanced warships could be in port. The crew fought flooding for 3 days before stabilizing the vessel. Divers later confirmed the keel remained intact, making eventual repairs possible. Following the attack, the wounded were evacuated to the U.S. Army's Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany before being transferred back to the United States. In June 2001, al-Qaeda propaganda openly celebrated the strike, with Osama bin Laden himself praising it as a model for future assaults. Al-Qaeda had already attempted a similar but less publicized strike months before the Cole bombing. On the 3rd of January 2000, Operatives tried to attack the U.S. Navy destroyer USS the Sullivans while it was in port at Aden as part of the Millennium attack plots. The plan was to load a small boat with explosives and detonate it alongside the warship. The attempt failed when the overloaded craft sank before reaching its target, forcing the mission to be abandoned. Planning for the later attack on Cole was revived during the Al-Qaeda summit in Kuala Lumpur between the 5th and 8th of January 2000. That meeting was attended by several operatives, including Khalid al-Mihdhar, who would later become one of the September 11th hijackers. Mihdhar traveled afterwards to San Diego, California, before leaving on the 10th of June 2000 to visit his wife in Yemen, at a house that also functioned as a communications hub for Al-Qaeda. Following the Cole bombing, Yemeni officials identified Mihdhar as one of the planners and confirmed his presence in Yemen at the time of the operation. He later returned to the United States and took part in the hijacking of American Airlines Flight 77, which crashed into the Pentagon and took the lives of 184 people. Rescue efforts on Cole began within hours of the explosion. The first naval vessel on scene was HMS Marlborough, a Royal Navy Type 23 frigate commanded by Captain Anthony Ricks. Marlborough diverted from its return voyage to the United Kingdom after a 6-month deployment in the Persian Gulf. With full medical and damage control teams aboard, the frigate immediately assisted Cole's crew. 11 of the most critically wounded sailors were evacuated by the French Air Force to a French military hospital in Djibouti, where they underwent surgery before being transferred to Germany. Additional U.S. military support quickly followed. A quick reaction force from the U.S. Air Force 363rd Expeditionary Security Forces Squadron arrived from Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia aboard C-130 aircraft. Soon after, United States Marines from the Interim Marine Corps Security Force Company in Bahrain landed by P-3 Orion, later reinforced by a fleet anti-terrorism security team platoon flown in from Norfolk, Virginia on the 13th of October. Other U.S. Navy ships rushed to the area to provide support. USS Donald Cook and USS Hawes arrived the same day to deliver logistical and repair assistance. In the days that followed, USNS Catawba, USS Camden, USS Anchorage, USS Duluth, and USS Tarawa reached Aden, bringing harbor security, damage control equipment, replacement crews, billeting, and food services for the surviving sailors. USS Cole was hauled across the sea and arrived in Pascagoula, Mississippi on the 13th December 2000, where the long process of rebuilding began. The investigation that followed was carried out under extremely hostile conditions. FBI and NCIS agents deployed to Yemen faced an environment where every movement carried danger. At the airport, they were met by Yemeni special forces, each soldier with an AK-47 pointed in their direction. In the evenings, speakers in Yemen's parliament called for jihad against America, their words broadcast on local television. When the agents requested surveillance footage, Yemeni authorities eventually produced a video, but the crucial moment of the explosion had been deleted. The agents lived under constant threat. They often slept in their clothes with weapons at their sides. At one point, their hotel was surrounded by armed men in traditional dress, some mounted in jeeps, forcing the agents to abandon the building for the safety of a U.S. Navy vessel anchored in the Bay of Aden. Even then, security remained uncertain. When finally cleared to fly back to shore, their helicopter flew evasive maneuvers to avoid the threat of shoulder-launched missiles. By May 2008, all those convicted for their roles in the Cole bombing had either escaped custody or been released by Yemeni officials. On the 30th of June 2008, U.S. military officials announced formal charges against Abd al-Rahim al-Nashiri, who had been held at Guantanamo Bay since 2008. Accused of organizing and directing the bombing, he faced a military tribunal and the prospect of capital punishment. He was one of 3 high-value detainees acknowledged by the U.S. government as having been subjected to waterboarding and other enhanced interrogation techniques during detention. Abu Ali al-Harathi was also identified as a key figure behind the attack. He became one of the first suspected terrorists to be targeted and killed by a missile-armed Predator drone. In 2003, the U.S. Justice Department indicted Jamal Ahmad Mohammed al-Badawi and Fahd al-Qusso, described as the last major conspirator still at large. Al-Badawi was convicted in Yemen and sentenced to capital punishment. but later escaped from prison in 2006 through a tunnel with 16 other inmates. He was ultimately taken out in a U.S. drone strike in January 2019 in Yemen's Marib Governorate. Fahd al-Qusso evaded capture for years until he was taken out by a U.S. drone strike in May 2012. Tawfiq bin Attash, captured in Pakistan in 2003 and held at Guantanamo Bay, has also been described as a mastermind of the bombing. Another co-conspirator, Abdul Mun'im Salim al-Fatahani, was confirmed killed in a U.S. drone strike in January 2012. Reports from the Yemeni government in May 2012 confirmed that Fahd al-Qusso was eliminated in a southern Yemen airstrike, later verified by both U.S. officials and al-Qaeda's own media wing, As-Sahab. The aftermath of the bombing raised critical questions about the rules of engagement that had governed Cole's security. Pentagon-approved procedures forbade guards from firing on small boats unless ordered by the captain or a senior officer. The suicide craft was not identified as hostile until it was too late, leaving sentries powerless to act. Accounts from surviving sailors described the immediate aftermath. Petty Officer John Washak recalled being ordered to turn his M60 machine gun away from a second approaching boat, even as he stood wounded and covered in blood. The order was a reminder that firing without being fired upon could have led to court-martial. Petty Officer Jennifer Kudrick later reflected that, had the sentries opened fire, they might have faced punishment for taking out 2 foreign nationals rather than recognition for preventing the deaths of 17 American sailors. Years after the attack, responsibility for the USS Cole bombing was formally addressed in U.S. courts. On 14 March 2007, a federal judge ruled that the government of Sudan was liable, citing substantial evidence that Sudanese officials had aided al-Qaeda's operations. In July of that year, the same court ordered Sudan to pay $8 million to the families of the 17 sailors who lost their lives, though Sudan's justice minister declared that the ruling would be appealed. In 2009, U.S. federal judge Kimba Wood released $13.4 million in frozen Sudanese assets to be awarded to 33 spouses, parents, and children of the sailors who lost their lives in the bombing. The compensation was granted under the 2002 Terrorism Risk Insurance Act and pursued through the efforts of Miami attorney Andrew C. Hall. The ruling reaffirmed Sudan's culpability in facilitating the attack. Another lawsuit was filed in 2010 in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia by 15 Cole sailors and 3 spouses, seeking damages for Sudan's role in supporting the terrorists who struck the destroyer. When the Sudanese government failed to respond, the court issued a default judgment in 2012, awarding the plaintiffs more than $314 million. On the 13th of February, 2020, the government of Sudan announced that it had reached an agreement to compensate the families of the USS Cole victims, a prerequisite for its removal from the state sponsors of terrorism list. Sudan reiterated that it did not accept responsibility for the bombing, but sought to normalize relations with the United States and other nations, while addressing claims tied to its former regime. In October 2020, a bilateral claims agreement was signed under which Sudan committed to pay $335 million in compensation, covering the victims of both the USS Cole bombing and the 1998 embassy bombings in Tanzania and Kenya. 2 years after the attack, USS Cole was once again underway, resuming full operations. In August 2003, the destroyer sailed with the Argentine warship Sarandí for joint drills. Cole's visit board search and seizure teams trained alongside their counterparts, conducting intensive maritime interdiction operations. The following day, the ship fired its close-in weapon system and 5-inch rounds in a live-fire exercise before exchanging officers with Sarandí by helicopter. Soon after, the destroyer Gonzales joined, and together the 3 ships rehearsed coordinated boardings. In February 2008, the destroyer was sent off Lebanon's coast, followed by further deployments. In February 2017, after Iranian-backed Houthi rebels attacked a Saudi warship in the Gulf of Aden, Cole was ordered to the region. Both Iran and the Houthis denied working together, but the symbolism of Cole's presence was unmistakable. In May 2024, Cole deployed once again amid escalating Middle East tensions following the Hamas attack on Israel. Operating from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean, the destroyer formed part of a strike force. Then in October 2024, the ship made headlines again. During Iranian missile strikes against Israel, Cole intercepted incoming weapons using SM-3 and SM-6 missiles, decisive proof of her enduring role at the front line of U.S. naval power. Unlucky for the cartels and those backing them, the USS Cole is not the only force now in play. A sudden and heavy buildup of U.S. naval power in the southern Caribbean has sparked serious questions in Caracas and across Washington about whether this deployment is truly about combating drug cartels, as the Trump administration insists, or if there is another objective beneath the surface. 7 U.S. warships, reinforced by a nuclear-powered fast-attack submarine, are either already in the region or expected to arrive soon. Together, they bring more than 4,500 sailors and Marines, a formidable show of force in waters that usually see far smaller deployments. President Donald Trump has declared that fighting cartels is a central mission for his administration, and U.S. officials claim the operation is designed to dismantle trafficking networks and foreign criminal groups. Stephen Miller, the Deputy White House Chief of Staff, went further, describing the buildup as a direct strike against drug cartels and foreign terrorist organizations operating in the hemisphere. Yet the true effect of this presence remains uncertain. Most maritime drug routes into the United States run through the Pacific, not the Atlantic, where these ships now patrol. And much of the Caribbean trade enters by clandestine flights, not sea lanes. The scale of the deployment makes clear that this is more than routine patrol duty. Among the vessels are the USS San Antonio, the USS Iwo Jima, the USS New York, and the USS Fort Lauderdale. Each is engineered for combat durability, operational versatility, and long-term offensive power. The USS Iwo Jima, a landing helicopter dock, serves as a floating command center for Marines and aircraft alike. It can launch helicopters, MV-22 Osprey tiltrotors, and amphibious assault vehicles. Defensive systems, from the rolling airframe missile to the Phalanx close-in weapon system, shield the vessel against incoming missiles, hostile aircraft, and surface threats, ensuring constant readiness in contested waters. The USS San Antonio and USS New York, both amphibious transport docks, are stealth-enhanced platforms built to carry thousands of Marines, vehicles, and equipment directly to shore. Their over-the-horizon amphibious capability relies on landing craft, helicopters, and tiltrotors, enabling sudden strikes beyond visible range. Reinforced hulls and command networks ensure resilience and survival under fire, turning the group into a mobile base of sustained combat power. Alongside them, the 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit deploys with unmatched adaptability. With approximately 2,200 Marines, the unit is trained in amphibious assaults, urban warfare, reconnaissance, and specialized missions. It fields armored vehicles, artillery, and air assets, including AH-1Z Viper attack helicopters, AV-8B Harrier jets, and MV-22 Ospreys, combining firepower with speed for decisive land and coastal strikes. The strength of this force lies in its integration. Secure, real-time networks link ships, aircraft, and Marines on the ground, enabling fast intelligence sharing, coordinated targeting, and synchronized action. This connectivity allows the group to switch seamlessly between amphibious combat, maritime security, humanitarian response, or precision special operations, projecting deterrent and offensive power across the globe within days. Reinforcing the message, on August 29, 2025, a Ticonderoga-class guided missile cruiser was photographed docking at Panama's naval base near the entrance to the Panama Canal. The skies above the Caribbean are now dominated by American surveillance. P-8 Poseidon aircraft, specialized naval patrol planes derived from the Boeing 737 platform, conduct persistent flights over international waters, collecting intelligence with surgical precision. Unlike their civilian counterparts, these aircraft are engineered for combat endurance and maneuverability. Reinforced fuselages, redesigned nacelles, stronger wings, and advanced anti-icing systems allow them to operate at lower altitudes and perform aggressive turns beyond the capacity of standard passenger jets. Each Poseidon carries a powerful suite of sensors, radars, and electronic warfare systems. The Raytheon APY-10 multi-mission radar can detect submarines, ships, and low-flying aircraft across vast distances. Inside the cabin, 5 crew stations line the port side, manned by naval flight officers and enlisted warfare operators who fuse radar, sonar, and electronic intelligence streams into a single operational picture. Unlike older P-3 Orions, the Poseidon sacrifices the magnetic anomaly detector in most versions, relying instead on advanced signal processing and, when necessary, pairing with unmanned MQ-4C Triton drones for continuous coverage. Weapons capability matches its surveillance role. A small bomb bay behind the wing can deploy torpedoes, depth charges, or specialized stores. With a high-altitude anti-submarine warfare weapon capability, even standard torpedoes can be dropped from 30,000 feet, turning them into precision glide weapons. The Poseidon's design also includes 6 auxiliary fuel tanks and the ability to refuel mid-flight via Air Force KC-13-5, KC-10, or KC-46 tankers, extending its range for days-long operations. The significance of their presence is not lost on observers. Officially, Washington maintains the operation is directed at cartel networks. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has positioned himself at U.S. Southern Command in Florida, reinforcing the administration's claim of direct oversight. Yet regional analysts remain unconvinced. They argue the deployment reflects classic pressure tactics against Nicolas Maduro's government in Venezuela. For David Smilda, the message is unmistakable: a calculated display of power, the kind of maritime coercion once described simply as gunboat diplomacy. Thanks for watching. Before you go, click the link on your screen to check out another video. See you there.